Sorry?
If you like, you can refer to that. This one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is that because you don't trust him to have say right?
Okay, thank you, everybody. Some of you may know who I am. I'm Glenn McGregor. Some of you will have the pleasure, or perhaps otherwise, of me teaching you in hydrometeorological hazards next week after next, and also I'll be teaching in understanding risk, teaching about climate risk management. But today is not about me. We're here to welcome Associate Professor Chao Ren from Chinese University of Hong Kong. Chao and I met earlier this year at the American Meteorological Society conference in Seattle, and we found we had something quite common between us. Chao is an architect by training. She did her undergraduate degree in architecture in Xiaotong University in China, and then moved to Hong Kong to do her PhD in the School of Architecture or Department of Architecture. And she's been on the academic staff at Chinese University of Hong Kong since 2012. She finished a PhD around 2010, had a 2-year postdoc before becoming a full member of the academic staff at Chinese University of Hong Kong School of Architecture. What I found interesting about Chao when I met her in Seattle was she is a person who is clearly working quite comfortably at the interface between her discipline of architecture and, let's say, broadly climate science. And she's very interested in the crossover of knowledge or information between these two, some would say, disparate disciplines. And in some ways, Chao is part of a new generation of interdisciplinary scientists taking knowledge from quite different fields and using that in the design of urban design and broader town planning. Chao is going to talk to us today about some of her work related to this crossover between climate science and architecture. She's very happy to take questions at the end. Is there something else you'd like to say about you? Oh, Chao is a machine. She's in terms of pumping out publications, she's super impressive. Every time I turn my computer on, it seems she's published a new paper. And I turn my computer on every day. So highly productive, building quite a name for herself internationally in the space between architecture and climate science. She's led on a couple of books which have broken new ground in this area as well. So over to you.
Thank you. So it is turned on. Okay. I try my best because sometimes my voice is a little bit small. So very happy to give a lecture today. And in the past 10 years, I worked very closely with many governments in Asian cities. So I've been invited by Professor Michael Greger. So things you are interested in is talk about the hazard, risk, and resilience. So I hope today's presentation will tell you some information what happened in Asia, especially in China.
Would you like a microphone? Microphone. Can we?
Okay, better? Yeah. Great. Okay, and so today's presentation, the first part, I will talk some information about the climate change and risk, what happened in Asia, and especially in China, since I come from China. And also later, I will introduce a new concept, which is called urban climate map, and how to use this kind of tool to assist climate considerations and data analysis for planning purpose. And then I will tell you a few cases in Asia, like Hong Kong, Macau, and also Taiwan. And so let's start. And we all know that climate is changing. There's no doubt about it. if you refer to the figures here, which is from the IPCC fifth assessment report, it's showing that both high emission scenario and also low emission scenarios, Asia is facing such kind of warming future. And in terms of the extreme weather event and also the temperature rise. And if you refer to the left figure here, for the high emission scenario, and by the mid-21st century, and then the most Asia will experience about 2 more degree rise in temperature, and by late 21st degree century, then we'll have the around 3 degree Celsius rise. And also, apart from the warming situations, precipitation is also another issue. And we also can find from this both high and also low scenario situations, and the precipitation will be raised, especially for the East and also the Southern Asia countries. And if you read carefully about Asia areas, the data from the IPCC and also fundings from the IPCC report, they give you such kind of summarize. And apart from the warning, water scarcity in many regions will be about flooding and also the food productivity issues, and also coastal areas, systems, and extreme climate events. They summarize this, but if you classify this kind of summarize, you can find it actually relevant to the 3 aspects. The AFG talk about how to do the actions for the mayors and policy makers, and how to implement such kind of climate change impact analysis into the local planning and urban development. For B, C, D, E, it's talk about the ecosystem and also the resources human living needed. And for H, it point out the future research directions about climate change, and more importantly, what is impact of climate change. And then if we look into the details about what kind of key risks identified by the IPCC fifth report, you can see that they talk about the heat wave and heat-related mortalities, flooding, food and water security, urbanizations, and urban poverty. And more important, when they mention this kind of key risk, they talk about what kind of driven factors behind this kind of risk, and also provide the various levels of impact on different time scales. And different time scales, they provide information and evidence to support the policy makings. Then let's take an example of the heat wave and heat-related mortality. So if you look carefully, you will see that when people talk about climate strategies, they talk about how to change the urban land use, and how to make a building design better, and how to provide more trees in urban areas. And also, if you talk about this, then you will think about planning and also policy makings, because they're talking about the long-term run. And also, all of this kind of key risks will happen at the city levels. So that means urban climate has a role to play. In the meantime, if we see this kind of threats to Asian cities, like the heat wave, flooding, sea level rise, extreme weather, and very often to read this kind of news from the local newspapers. For example, in Hong Kong, in last September, and we have 2 typhoons within 5 days. And one of them hit the Macau directly and caused a lot of problems to the local government and also the people. And then if we talk about the heat wave, and the map showing that the potential risk raising by the heat waves. And there are 5 top countries in terms of heat wave risk. The first one is India, and then US, Pakistan, Romania, and China. And 70% of the heat wave risk actually happened in India, Pakistan, and China. And because they have a huge population and also the high population density, so they have such kind of huge vulnerability issues. And also because of heat wave and lack of the water, so they also have potential problems. And then in terms of the populations, And if we read the report, we also found that the Asian populations actually tripled in the last 3 decades. And for the future, we expect more, i.e. by the end of the 2030 or even the 2050, we expect to double this kind of populations. So you may ask, what is the problem of this kind of urban population? Which means the residents in urban areas is very vulnerable to this kind of problems. And also, if we zoom in to see what happened at the regional level or the city cluster levels in East and South Asia, this map showing the urbanization and also urban expansion situations. The red color, this one, and showing the urban expansion situation happened in the 2000 to 2010, and showing a lot of conversion of the rural land areas into the urban areas. And the most red color, which happened in the China, in China, and actually the gray one showing the Tokyo and also the South Korea, because they are already finished their urbanization process, so they have less this kind of urban expansion situations. And then according to the UN projection for the population, and by 2030, the Southeast Asia, that means we'll have more this kind of medium to the mega city situations. And then you realize the city is not lonely, and they definitely need to work together with the neighborhood cities together and at the regional level to solve the problems. And for example, let me show you one of the mega region or mega city situation in China, which is called a Imperial Delta region. And here, the 3 figures showing the urbanization situations from the 1980s to 2010s. And the circle showing the city, which is called Shenzhen, and this is a very young city, only only have 30 years old. And at the very beginning, this only a fish village, and recently the urban sprawl happened very quickly. And so right now you can see that red color showing all the urban areas or built-up areas. And the cause of problem, because in Hong Kong, where the coastal areas, the Imperial Delta, they have this kind of land sea breeze phenomenon daily, and also Imperial Delta region is one of the major economic region in China. So that means they have a lot of factories and industry activities in this region. So every day, if the sun will heat up the air, so the air from the land area will going up, and then because of the thermal capacity difference between the land and the water, so the cool air actually will coming from the sea areas going to the land area. Then eventually they have formed such kind of circulation, and because of the pollutions and also the industry activities, they have this kind of haze event will happen in this area. So they got this kind of local circulations, and this is not very easy to deal with. So right now in Hong Kong, if we want to solve the problem of, i.e. the local air pollution problems, we definitely need to work very closely with Guangdong province, our surrounding neighborhood. And then later, if you talk about the land use and also other climate adaptation strategies, if you refer to the ARC3, which is the first urban climate assessment report on the climate change and cities, actually they have a latest version which is published this year by Cambridge University Press. But they talk about how to do this kind of adaptation strategies at the city level, and how to deal with this kind of information in the planning. So if you refer to the report, they point out the 3 things, very interesting. The first one is the urban heat island issues, and which is caused by the urban development. And second one is talk about if we have this, then what is the consequence, i.e. the energy impact for the heating and also cooling. And also for the design strategies, they also recommend the trees and vegetations to reduce such kind of urban heat island effect. And then if we talk about the heat wave situations, And the overall direct risk to climate change, including the extreme weathers, the sea level rise, agricultural productivity loss. Actually, China ranks number 1. Okay, and the map showing the overall global situations. And then, so let's see what is adaptation strategies from China. And China's central government in 2012, they published this document, talk about 5 highlight areas to do the adaptation strategies. The first one is talk about the disaster prevention and mitigation. So this is a kind of intergovernmental collaborations. They require the joint effort from the Ministry of Civil Affairs, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Water Resources, and to deal with such kind of extreme weather. And however, given the vastness of China's territory, the task is very challenging. And also the second one is talk about the monitoring and early warning issues. And so that is why the China Meteorology Administration and the State Oceanic Administration, right now they create such kind of system. So they will issue the early warning to the local government to prepare such kind of the disaster or extreme events. And actually, if you refer to the detailed document, this the warning system they start in 2012. And then the third areas talk about agriculture and water resources. And because China actually will lack of enough water to support our big population, so that is why the outline of national agriculture water conservation, promote water-saving agriculture, and try to help to solve this kind of problem. And in the meantime, they also point out the 4th areas, which is talk about coastal areas and ecosystem. So a lot of documents and also the policy talk about how to protect our ecosystem, even try to recover our ecosystems. But the problem is China has a very long coastal line, and the most rich, highly developed cities along this coastal line, the east coastal line, and so they will have a potential risk and also the problems. And last one is talk about the public health. So they try to minimize the impact of climate change on public health in form of the heat wave. But problem is, if you read very carefully about the details, the document recommend is only try to drink safely drink the water, and also the PM2.5 issues is one of the focus. And then climate change actually, according to the latest the study result from the Science Advances, they point out they may intensifying China's small crisis, i.e. Because of the result of the changing bioreal sphere and from the North Pole areas, and they weaken the whole being environmental situations. So that means in the future in China, we may have less wind situations. And then if we have less wind or weak wind situations in the cities, then we have a higher chance to have this kind of haze event. And who will suffering? Not only China. Okay, and so if you refer to the NASA this image, in one of the event in haze event in 2007, you can see that all the gray color areas or the haze areas not only cover China but also Korean Peninsula and also Japan. So that is why recently one of the Japanese university, they do this kind of projection, try to understand what is the consequence of the air pollution situation from China affect Japan. And in China, because like you know, the air pollution is one of the topical environmental issues. So if you read the recent news, for example, like Beijing, they're also suffering the haze event recently. And so that is why the local government creates such kind of warning system. And the first red alert is the highest level, and the first issue this kind of alert actually happened in the 2015, 7th December in Beijing. And this photo showing that Tiananmen Square, in Beijing, which is the largest square on Earth. And you're supposed to can see the forbidden cities, and also you can see the very big openness areas. But unfortunately, we have the haze event. You cannot see anything. And Beijing is not the only one have such kind of air pollution issues. Actually, in China, about like Wuhan, Shanghai, Guangzhou, or Harbin, from the south to the northern part of China, they all suffer about this. And if you refer to the Asian Development Bank report, which is published in the end of the 2012, they mentioned that 1/7 of China suffers haze event, heavy air pollution, intensified urban heat island problems, and less than 1% of 5 metropolitan cities in China can reach the WMO air quality standard. So this is the sad truth we are facing. And this is a very bad air we are breathing, especially in the winter. And people will ask the question, what is the consequence? What kind of consequence in terms of public health impact? So if you refer to the latest research result, they said if we cannot stop such kind of high pollution emissions, then in future we expect raising cases of the cancer in China. And in the meantime, if you look very carefully about the cancer types, and you find that lung cancer is the number one, no matter what kind of agenda you have. And also, according to the WMO's report, they said that if your human body long-term exposure to such kind of heavy pollution air, then you have higher chance to get a lung cancer. And according to the statistical result from the public health studies, they mentioned that air pollution taking its toll with estimate of the 7,500 deaths per day in China. So this is a very severe situation we are facing. And that is why our president and also the central government China, they pay high attention on this. And they mention the Chinese dream, that is means one day in China, especially the younger and the future generation, will see and hope we can see this kind of blue sky, green mountains, and clean water. So that is why since 2014, they issued many documents or policies like the central government policies, talk about national future development directions, and they also talk about the air pollution, how to control the air pollutions. We even change our air quality index guidelines. And also they talk about ecological protections, climate change adaptations, and also for industry guidelines and technical note, they mention from the metrology perspective, and also urban planning and architecture design. So all this kind of information, they try to implement climate considerations into the planning and also the urban development. So that is why the urban climate is so important. I guess some students may not have the background about urban climate. Very simply to say that climate, actually, they have 6 parameters or factors to affect the climate, urban climate. So in terms of the factors, which is talking about city locations, time, weather, the city form, the city size, and the city metabolism. And if you refer to this figure, you will see that the location will be the fixed factor, and the modulator will be the time and the weather. And if you are policymakers and if you are designers, you only can change 3 factors in terms of city metabolism, the city size, and the city form. And so that is why the planners need to work very closely with climatologists, because once you make a decision for your city master plan, and also once you choose the design for buildings, then it will be fixed for another 50 or even 100 years. It will be stay there forever. And so that is why we need to have this kind of collaboration, interdisciplinary collaborations. But the problem is they talk about different language, and they also have a different background. For the climatologists, they come from the science. So very often the scientists, they will talk about the theoretical knowledge based on their observations, measurements, simulations, hypotheses, and they will do the test to examine whether this is true or not. But for the designers, very often we'll need to require this kind of practical knowledge based on the sensibilities, invention, validation, and implementation. And more important, when we talk about the planning and urban development strategies, it's a kind of balanced result of all aspect informations. And also you need to consider the political agendas when you make the right decision. So actually, if you refer to the literature review, Sweden researchers, they conduct the studies, try to understand why in the past almost 100 years for the urban climate science, they produce so many data result, but still have very low impact in the planning process. So they identify what is the key issues and what is obstacles for this kind of knowledge transfer and implementation. In the end, they found that they have several things like the lack of the tools and also which is suitable for planners. And also they need to improve the awareness for the urban climate, because today if you talk to mayors and policymakers, they don't have enough knowledge and awareness about the climate issues. And then if they don't know that, very often they just neglect it in the process of the policy making. And also we need to improve the communication and argument, because if you don't talk about it, then people just totally forget it very quickly. And then we also need to improve the institutional capacities. So for example, like your university, you provide this course, talk about hazard, risk, and resilience. That is very needed and timely. And then, so that is why, because of this kind of key conclusions, so that is why in Hong Kong, we try to do this kind of knowledge transfer between the science and also the planning decisions. And we use a concept which is called urban climate mapping. And so we collect all kinds of informations embedded in the GIS, and we access and process and do analysis. In the meantime, we keep in touch with the different stakeholders and also the public and also the government offices. And then eventually we provide this kind of scientific support for policy making and also the planning design. And so you may ask, what is the urban climate map? And actually, this map has three major elements: the input layers and urban climate analysis map, and also the urban climate recommendation map. So the input layers will including the analytical informations about climate elements like the temperature, wind speed, wind directions, air pollutions, precipitations, and also will consider the geographic terrain informations and also the greenery and planning parameters. They will evaluate how this kind of elements affect the climate situations, and then synergize the evaluation to create urban climate analysis map, which is showing the scientific understanding about climate situation. But they put the data and also scientific result into the mapping, so they can show the the spatial scale situations. In the meantime, from the urban climate analysis map, and very often the different stakeholder engagement and also the local government will come in, and they will talk to each other, and eventually they make a decision about the planning recommendations, and also together with the instruction for the future development. So actually, if you talk about urban climate map, Germany lead a pioneer role in these areas, and they even have their national guidelines to draw up this kind of climate and air pollution maps. And in these guidelines, they mention the two important facts. One is an analytical facts, i.e. how to evaluate and get understanding about the different distributions information from the temperature, wind directions, precipitation, air pollutants. And based on this kind of understanding, they will evaluate so where is the ventilation, how the urban ventilated, and where is the pollution zones, and what is the emission source of the pollutions, and also what is the climate hopes, such kind of micro scale climate situations at the city level. And then they will provide the strategies. And when we do this kind of implementations, very often there is a misunderstanding about the scales. Because if you do the climate studies, you will be very familiar with meso scale, and the local scale, and also micro scale. But if you do the planning and design, there are 4 scales, which is regional level, the city cluster plan, the city master plan, and also district plan and planning design, building design. So that means if you do this kind of knowledge transfer, skills is very important. So the local, especially the local skill and also the micro skill, they cross the different design skills. So this is sometimes the mistake happened in the scientific studies about climate applications. And in the meantime, we also need to understand the planning and policy making decision process. For example, if you do a building design, then you talk about how to present your conceptual design to the government, to your client, and then once they adopt it, then you implement such kind of design into the scheme design, and then detailed design, and later will be the tender and also the construction plan. And actually, for the different integrated design actions, they talk about a different process. So this is one example we are doing for Hong Kong situation, and we help the Hong Kong Green Building Councillor to create a guidebook which is called Microclimate Design Guidebook for building design. So once we map out all those design actions to improve the microclimate situations, we realize the different design actions, they located into a different stage. So that means if you are a designer or you are an architect, you need to consider different things at different stage. And also, very often when we talk with the local government and also the planners and the designers, they ask this kind of question. Okay, so we don't want to know the details about your scientific data, but you just tell me what action we needed, and what is the most needed, and how much effort we can put for this kind of need, and also what benefit can be expected. Because the policymakers, they will, once they adopt your ideas, then eventually this is one of the credit for their political performance, right? And so that is why when we do this kind of implementations, we always bearing these 4 questions in mind. And also for the climate map studies, if you refer to the literature review, you will find that it's very popular. That means about 15 countries, about 50 cities already initiated or already conduct such kind of studies. And especially the German-speaking countries, they do this kind of studies very often. And in Asia, we help the Chinese government, Macau and Singapore and Taiwan to implement such kind of idea into the local system. And if you're interested, I would like to recommend you have a look at this book, which is published in 2015. It's a collection of the case studies and also provide detailed methodologies how to create such kind of urban climate map, and also point out the future. And for the Chinese students or the students who like to work in China, then we have the Chinese portion, which is much more cheaper. And then right now, I would like to show you some more cases which we work together with the local government. For Hong Kong, we create such kind of, we got commission from the local planning department, and we finished the project by 2012. And if you have never visited Hong Kong, let me introduce some background information. So Hong Kong, located in the subtropical climate region, that means we have very hot and humid summer. Humid means you have 100% relative humidity, okay, in summer. And hot means the temperature is very constant and roughly around 30 to 33 degrees Celsius. And we have very mild winter, and normally we have very sunny days. And so that is the best season if you can visit us. And for the land area, it's about 1,000 square kilometers, and the urban areas only taken about 23%. So if from this satellite image, you can see that we still have a lot of areas, the green areas, which is protected and covered by the country park, totally under the protection about legal protection. And right now, our population is about 7.3 million. And so that is why we have extremely high urban density, population density. So average population density for the metro area is about 6,000 square meters. And last week I visited Copenhagen. I checked their data about the population density. It's about only 100 something per square meter. And if we talk about Norway or Sweden, it's about 20 something. So you can see we have this very extreme high population density. So about the history of urban development and building design in Hong Kong, and the major urban development happened in the 1940s. And currently we have the low-rise building, just like here. But eventually, nowadays, we have high-rise buildings. And in terms of the building height, average building height in Hong Kong is about 60 meters. That means 30 stories. And so what is the consequence for such kind of high density, high-rise urban context? And if you have a disease, then they may be very easily to affect many people. So that is why in 2003, unfortunately, we have the SARS. In fact, about 1,750 people in China, killing almost 300 people over a 4 months period. And because of this, it's like an alert to the both local government and also the public. So that is why in the past, that is why the government bear this kind of climate issues in mind. And so they said, okay, in future, we need to have a better building layout, and also we need to examine the practically of the stimulating air ventilation assessment for consideration for the planning and also future development. And in the past, from the 2003, you can see the list here. And the government commissioned many documents talk about air ventilation assessment, the building design, how to support a sustainable urban living space in Hong Kong, and the urban climate map, how to evaluate our climate resources for the future development. And also we commission such kind of consultancy studies, try to provide wind availability data, and also microclimate studies, and for public housing authority, and microclimate design guidebook, etc. And tackles, all this document tackles various design levels, from the city master layout to the district planning to the building site level. And this is a call for joint effort from the interdisciplinary and also from the government side. And let me tell you one information about air ventilation assessment. Because SARS happened in Hong Kong in 2003, and in the end there are reports from the government side. They mentioned that the possible reasons cause the SARS will easily spread in the city. One is with lack of enough sunshine because of the high-dense, high-rise urban context. The other one is with lack of enough fresh air in the downtown areas. So by that day, the government commissioned us to do this kind of air ventilation assessment. That means every new design project, and if they above the 2 hectares, especially the government project, they need to go through the system, and they need to check whether their design proposal is good enough. So they will run the models and the test point to check the wind situation at pedestrian level, how their building design will affect pedestrian level's wind. If this is not meet the standard, then they will go around again until they find the suitable design proposals. And so right now, the Hong Kong government, if they want to sell a land, they need to do this kind of process. And also, the problem is for the air ventilation assessment, once we finished in 2005, we realized that this tackle, the implementation level is only at the building site layout, but at the city level, we need to get a more comprehensive understanding about the wind, about the thermal environment situations. So that is why we conduct urban climate map. For this map, we create a new methodology, which is very different from the German methodology. Because Hong Kong, they have this unique high density, high-rise situations. So we put the data resolution at very fine scale. It's talk about 100 meter, and also in the meantime, we talk about the building features and also the vertical evaluations, how to understand the city and buildings from the three-dimensional. So we including the building volume, the ground coverage, the green space, and proximity to the openness. Then combine all this kind of understanding into the two aspects. One is how they affect the thermal environment. The other one is how they change the wind situations. Then combine them to create urban climate map, analysis map, and eventually to the recommendation map. And behind each layers, when we do the classifications and evaluations, we conduct many studies, including the thermal comfort studies. And for example, before the 2006, there are very limited studies in tropical or subtropical region talk about thermal comfort, outdoor thermal comfort situations. And people only refer to the German data or German guidelines. And they said normally for the people in the summer, they will report discomfortable from the temperature range will be around 23 to 25 degrees Celsius. But for Hong Kong, the average summer temperature is around 27 degrees Celsius. So definitely it's far beyond the threshold. So that is why we do this kind of user survey to have a local definition about the discomfortable situation in Hong Kong. And in the meantime, we also conduct a wind tunnel test, trying to get understanding how the urban morphology affect the wind environment and how the wind penetrate goes through the urban areas. And also we conduct a field measurement, try to get local observations from at the roadside. And also we conduct a travels measurement to get intra-urban temperature understanding. And then we also do the remote sensing and microclimate modeling, and then eventually we create this kind of statistical analysis to link the different building parameters and its impact on the local climate situations. And so that is why later, when we synergize all the evaluation results, then we can create such kind of urban climate analysis map. And for Hong Kong, we classify into the 8 categories. And red color showing the problem areas. And also together with the planning department staff, we have a negotiation discussion, and then eventually we combine 8 classes into 5 planning zones for planning actions. And then we create this urban climate recommendation map. And apart from that, because we need to educate the general public and also the professional people like the architect and the planners. So that is why we have a new chapter in the planning, Hong Kong Planning Standard Guidelines, talk about the qualitative design guidelines and how to use the figures and program diagram to show what is a good design to them. And so for example, like this is a very typical Hong Kong building typology. And if they want to create a podium, orangely like this, like a birthday cake, you have a gigantic podium, and then you have building towers like a candle on the birthday cake. But right now, if you want to improve the pedestrian level wind environment situations, then you need to step back the podium so you can get large air volume at pedestrian level. And also we have a new terms in the planning language, which is called a non-building area. So that means even you are a developer, you buy a piece of land, but the government still can chop the land into the several parts and define this as non-building areas. It's not available for any building or building towers there. So apart from that, based on our scientific analysis and result, we provided planning and design actions. Like what I mentioned earlier, when we do this kind of planning strategies, we always provide a time scale and a spatial scale. So let the local government have a full manual to understand what kind of design strategy or action is suitable for the district, for different districts. And also in Hong Kong, for the planning system, we talk about the city level, the territorial development strategy, and then the district level, the outline zoning plan. Then we talk about the building site level. And for urban climate map, we implement into the district level. So when they do the outline zoning plan renewal, they will take into consideration. Right now, they have started this kind of exercise since 2007, and so we help them to update the plans and put the climate consideration into the plans. And also, this kind of urban climate information, they provide the background conditions for the detailed microclimate studies and also air ventilation study, especially for the public housing in Hong Kong. They will adopt these ideas. In Hong Kong, about 30% people live in the public housing, so that means affect a lot. And now I would like to show you one real cases how to implement such kind of analysis into the local district plan. So Hong Kong, we have an old Kai-Tak airport, and this is a map showing that how the aircraft landed in Hong Kong in good old days before the 1997. And so this is the airport located in one of the congested dense urban areas. And if you want from the map, you can see that all surrounded by the old towns and also many buildings. So, and also they almost crash the buildings and they can land it, something like that. So every pilot, they said if they got lesson first, they will try to do this land in Hong Kong to test whether they are good enough. Okay, and since 1997, the airport moved to the Lantau Island. The whole piece of land, about 64 hectares, are empty. So the local government tried to figure out how to make a new development for this area. So the first things, when they talk about the master layout for this district, they need to understand how to arrange the street orientations, the building blocks, and land use distributions, etc. So they conduct this air ventilation assessment, try to understand how the wind goes through the area. And also this is areas located in the front area of the coast area. So if they wrongly build up, so they may affect a lot for the surrounding residential areas in the hand. So that is why they create air ventilation assessment, check the incoming wind, and what is the possible layout for this to welcome incoming wind. And according to the findings, they have the 4 strategies. One is they will chop the whole area into the small piece of the land areas, less than 2 hectares for each. And then they will focus all the building design and the district design on improving the wind environment at pedestrian level. And also there's no podium development in this area, and the street grade pattern layout will following the incoming wind situations. And so this is a projection for the future development. And right now we finished some new development here. It's a ferry terminal, and also some public housing already finished. So in future, just in case you have a chance to visit us, you can go there and have a look to check whether the wind situation is enough. Another one is in Hong Kong, we also have a lot of old towns which is facing the urban renewal. So this is one of the new old town which is called Guan Tong City Center. And in good old days, originally it's like this, and but right now the proposal will increase the building high rise, but they will have more gaps and openness at the pedestrian level, and also increase the greenery. So that is based on the recommendations. They have the strategies like there's no wall building and not 100% site coverage, and intensify the greening situation, especially at the street level, and set back some narrow street, for example, like this one. Okay, and also this one. And also they have the inner side air corridor and air pass connectivities. So they will link the air from here and here. And then we finished the project, Hong Kong project in 2012, but we constantly help local government to update their urban and also district plans from time to time. And so our neighbors like Taiwan, Kaohsiung City, they're also very interested. So they commission us to do the eco-city design for their city. And we use the similar methodology, but given the different the data we have from the local government, so we change the methodology slightly a little bit, and then we have this kind of map to showing the different situations and the different color intensity of different colors showing the situation of the urban heat island situations. And then we provide recommendations from the 4 aspects. One is a wind aspect. So we identify what is the focus areas and what is the wind resources that they have. And for different focus areas, we'll provide a very simple design strategies for them to consider, and also together with the qualitative design guidelines. And for water bodies, we'll also suggest how to use the rivers and also the large water bodies to have such kind of cooling effect to the surrounding areas. And also we provide strategies and recommendations for the greenery master layout. And also for the downtown center, we provide very detailed design strategies to implement such kind of design actions into their local plan. And also we got the invitation from Macau government, and Macau is also one of the high density city, and so we help them to create. So first for the stage 1, we help them to get the right issues to start with. So we have a expert engagement, and then we identify that they need to consider the wind environment and also thermal environment. Right now, we just finished a wind environment analysis for Macau, and so we use the large eddy simulations, and then we check what is the new town development strategies. And the yellow color here showing the artificial islands for Macau in future. Right now, they finished a new one, which is called Area A, and very, very close to the Macau Peninsula, the old town areas of Macau. And then they have this kind of simulations to check what is the possible things happen. And then we do the comparison. One is no new artificial island, this one, and the other one is with new artificial island, and we check the difference. Then we found that because when they do the urban new town plan, they make gaps between the artificial island and also the old town. So actually the worst case here, they don't affect the downtown areas too much, but the problem is they have created the weak wind situations. And then we create such kind of urban climate map and together with recommendations. And also we provide the design strategies, try to let them understand how to create a better environment for the built environment, especially the building design, how to implement the wind from the 3-dimensional levels. And also for Singapore, once we finish this urban climate map, the greenery is one of the key design strategies for the local government. Right now, they implement 100% greenery coverage to their local development. So you can see that they implement the greenery vertically, and one of the successful cases is this hotel. So next time, if you can visit Singapore, you can try this hotel. It's very nice. And so that is why for our analysis and design strategies, we always treat our, we'll define what is the problems for high density environments, such like a low urban volume, high surface temperature, no shading, very limited greener space. In the meantime, we'll try to solve the problems from the 3-dimensional and also more focus at the pedestrian level, because people work or live at pedestrian level. So that is why we give the recommendations like this. So how to reduce the site coverage, how to increase the greenery, and how to provide voids, gaps, and building permeabilities. And if you have a chance to read my book, we have a special section talk about the future direction and future trend for this kind of urban climate mapping studies. And we found that definitely in future we need to involve more social, physical, urban, environmental informations, i.e. more from the human dimension. And also we need to have more expert knowledge about local topographic climate change for the cities. And also, more important, we need to have more understanding about the urban morphology, urban characteristics. And then very often, for example, we got many invitations from Chinese cities, but unfortunately we cannot provide the help for them because the lack of the data. And right now we have a collaboration with the Google Earth Engine team to create a global scale urban morphology database. Hopefully by the end of next year we'll have some initial result. And then we also have facing such kind of climate change, so definitely we need to consider different emission scenarios based urban climate maps. And one of the recent efforts for my team, we work together with the public health people, try to evaluate based on this kind of scientific understanding about climate conditions in the cities, what is the impact for the people. And we conduct studies for Hong Kong and also Kaohsiung. For Hong Kong, a recent political agenda for long-term development planning is talk about how to create a healthy city. So that it means we need to understand what is public health impact for the different district. And in Hong Kong, we're also facing such kind of extreme weather event. And in Hong Kong, we have two indicators for the extreme hot weather event. One is very hot day, the other one is hot night. And this one is showing the record in the past 100 years in Hong Kong. And you can see that currently we still have a lot of days, which is called cold days in winter. But unfortunately, recently we have less and less winter days. But we have more prolonged summer situation, and especially for this kind of extreme weather event. And especially for the minimum temperature increase faster than the maximum temperature. So that means the hot night will turn to be more and more in future. And also according to the projection for the future, you can see that we expect to have more extreme hot weather event. And so from our previous urban climate analysis map, and we extract understanding about urban heat island intensity and put into the territorial planning unit, which is the unit which is collect census data, including the public health data. And then we create the statistical analysis, and eventually we make a conclusions and found that in Hong Kong, when temperature above the 28 degrees Celsius, every raise 1 degree Celsius in temperature will associate about 1.5% heat-related mortality. And if we put this into the whole Asian map, then you can see that it makes sense because the people living in the tropical area, they're more tolerant about heat. But in the meantime, if we talk about the future warming situations, they need to be prepared. And also, so that is why recently, from this year, we have collaboration with Hong Kong Observatory. So we want to get more detailed understanding at the district level, not only just get a number or conclusion at the city level. Because if you want to persuade the policymakers to do something, then you need to show this kind of district information, very detailed information. So we do the mapping showing that very hot days and hot night. And if you just analysis the data from the local observatories, then you get this information, the map. But if you factor the built environment, i.e. the high density, high-rise urban scenarios, then you can get more specific understanding about impact of the heat wave for the local situation. And this map showing the population percentage of the elderly people in Hong Kong. And if you do the cross-checking for the three maps, and you find that actually the daytime is not big problem. The problem is nighttime. And in Hong Kong, the most action for the extreme hot weather actually talk about the daytime, especially like the Labour's Department, hospital authority, etc. So the nighttime should be should draw their attention more in future. So that is why we have collaboration with them recently. And so I think I almost the end of my lecture, and you may ask what is the take-home message. So I present a lot information and share my practical experience. And the most lesson I learned from the past 10 years work is we definitely need to have this kind of scientific evidence-based support for the policy and the planning decision. But in the meantime, when we point out the data, we not only tell them a figure or number, but we need to tell them what is how does it make sense in terms of the time scale and also the spatial scale. So you need to put this kind of information into the mapping or distribution information and link them to the planning or policy language. Then with the new science, data science and informatics technologies, then you can do this. And of course, and when we do the application and implementations, very often is kind of negotiation and also the communication. So we also have some unsuccessful stories, but in the meantime, we always try to provide the solutions and also result with the policymakers, because we know that they need to be educated. In the meantime, because they need to consider many aspects, data and information, so we need to make sure they won't neglect or forget climate information in their mind. And also, as a scholar, we are not only producing paper as a paper machine, but we also need to would like to see how to make a knowledge transfer and change impact on policy. So that is why we work with government very closely. And in the end, we know that from the IPCC report, from the period study result, and also from the local government, we need to show what is the impact of the climate change. And eventually, the people is definitely the key factor. So that is why recently we conduct this kind of study, which is called a healthy city, and link the people, the public health impact together. So very often people will say, okay, for the climate change action, we know this is a global effect, and we do the action at the local level. But today we would like to see, is it think globally, act locally, or the other way around? We can act locally, but affect globally. Thank you.
Thank you.